It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood.
Welcome to Boone and Crockett's Heritage of the Hunt.
Welcome to Boone and Crockett Club's Heritage of the Hunt. We have Melissa Bachman sitting in the chair with us today. Melissa, you are our keynote speaker for the 32nd Big Game Awards, and we are so excited to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. I sure do appreciate it.
I appreciate having you here, and I love the fact that we have a woman who's our keynote speaker. And this isn't your first time, right?
No, I believe it was 6 years ago. I was the speaker on the Youth Awards night, which is just so wonderful. I also got to experience it here again, and it's just one of my favorite things. And, you know, I really love coming and just kind of spreading the message of conservation and families and all the things that are so near and dear to my heart.
Absolutely. You know, you were at the Generation Next event last night, the Jack Steele Parker Generation Next event last night. And you did that. You spoke there last time. Why is it important, particularly now that you've got your own kids?
You know, it was always important to me, but now once you have your own children, I think it really, really hits home, because it is literally what is going to be coming behind us. And, you know, there's so many negative things right now with social media and all these different influences. I think as hunters, it's almost our obligation to go out there and to try to help kids get involved and show them, because they may not have the influences that I may have had growing up, you know, to be a part of it. And I believe word of mouth among children is the best thing you could ever do. So if you can convince one kid to go hunting and go out and enjoy it and teach them the message of conservation, I think that word just spreads among them, their friends. It's the most organic way to get a bunch of kids involved.
Absolutely. So you alluded to it. What was your upbringing? Did you grow up as a hunter?
Yeah, you know, my mom hunted, my dad hunted. They brought my brother and I always along. And
Is that South Dakota?
I grew up in Minnesota.
You were in Minnesota, okay.
Yep, and I live in South Dakota now, but my mom and dad joked that the reason they brought us, they didn't want to pay for babysitters. So they just brought us along, and things were very different. My dad would bring us to the tree stand. We didn't have safety harnesses. We literally went and got a thing of twine and tied ourselves to the sled. But, you know,
It worked.
Safety still was there. Much better solutions now. But, you know, I think it's just so important. And I think another aspect that people forget about are the family bonds that can be created. You know, some of those memories still, when I go home for Christmas, we're talking about some of those hunting memories. We're talking about hunting public land together. And that's something I want for my children. I want them to have places to go. I want the animals to get bigger. I want them to have more opportunity. And I want that for every child out there.
Yeah, that absolutely resonates. I have very vivid memories of the time hunting with my grandfather, my father, and the family members, and I think it's so important. So how did you decide to pursue a path as a hunter that had a television show and the social media following that you do? Did you fall into it, or how did that go?
That was my goal. I wanted to do it. So I was either going to go this route or be an anesthesiologist.
Oh,
And go to medical school.
There you
So
go.
it's a very
Very different, yes.
There was a path that, and I chose this, and, you know, I didn't know how to go about it. My professors told me it was basically a pipe dream. That's not going to happen. But I got a double major in television production and Spanish, went out and started looking for a job. Now I was an honor student. I was in all these things. I have so many jobs. It's going to be amazing. And I get out there and nobody would hire me. I applied at 74 locations.
Oh, wow.
And not one person would hire me.
Huh.
And I ended up working for free at the North American Hunting Club. And I basically said, if you just let me come work that way I can get my experience, I will come do it for free. And they said, well, when can you start? And I said, tomorrow. And I worked for 4 months, driving 150 miles a day, every single day, just to go work for free, get my foot in the door.
Wow.
And then I became a producer. And as a producer, I was an editor. I would film hunts. I would do it for everybody else. But my goal was to, of course, be in front of the camera someday, but I knew that I had to learn every aspect of it. And I believe that's kind of been the cornerstone of my entire career, because I can do every part of it because I've had to in the past. I had nobody bankrolling me. You know, I had to do that work. So I think kind of learning every part of it really helped. And then, you know, always having that dream. And I always tell kids that, you know, whatever crazy dream it is, if you will go out there and you will outwork everybody else, you can achieve anything. And I'm not saying I'm the best hunter on earth. There's other people who maybe are much better in other aspects, but nobody will outwork me. And that's always kind of been my model, and it's worked, you know.
Absolutely.
It takes longer than you hope, and there's always some challenges. Believe me, there were times I've looked at the bank account and thought, I should have been an anesthesiologist.
Probably.
But I've
Having a lot more
met
fun.
people, and I met my husband through it. I've met so many wonderful people along the way.
Oh, that's fantastic. So when did you start your television show?
So I am in season 15.
Oh, wow.
I actually was a producer and a videographer for almost 4 years first.
Okay.
And then what I would do is if I worked 30 days straight, I got 5 comp days, and I would take those days and go film my own thing on my own, edit it together, and wait till someone didn't get a show complete. And when they didn't have it ready, I'd say, well, I have this one ready. It's all ready and you can have it for free. And that kind of was always the ticket, is giving everything away for free. Sometimes people, place a huge value on different things, and it may have value at some point, but someone's got to see it first. So I went the route of giving it away just to get my foot in the door. And I think that was a very helpful way. And then it all worked out. And, now, nobody owns it. I've done all the aspects of it myself. I sell the spots. I do the editing. I do so many things. And of course, I hire great people to help. But it's having a good team and being out there. It's the most important thing you can do.
Absolutely, that makes sense. So how long have you known about the Boone and Crockett Club? Has that been throughout your career?
Yeah,
And life?
I was a little.
I was going to say kid.
Yeah. My mom and dad were hunters, and I believe, Boone and Crockett's always been kind of the idea of having that goal to reach. And I think kids and adults and everybody really, goals are important. And I think, I didn't think I would ever get a buck. That would be Boone and Crockett. That was a pipe dream, really. And now I've been lucky enough to have numerous bucks. But I think it's just really important to kind of have that goal. And then for me, we sit with my kids and watch and look through the books and to see the numbers and to see them increasing. I mean, I think there was, 152 kids, 16 and under in the last 3 years. Something over 150 have put in animals to the record books. And it just makes my heart smile to see that and to know that not only are there people out, getting their kids involved, they're taking the time, they're teaching them. Those kids will be lifelong members who love it forever.
Absolutely. And the club is, and as you know so well, the club and the records is what so many people know about us. But making the connection between the club's history of conservation and the records program and fair chase hunting is a key part of what we're trying to do with this podcast and the work that we do in a public way. How important is it for people coming up who have or set a goal to have an animal in the record book to also understand the history of conservation and what it means to be a fair chase hunter?
I think it's super important. And I think it's an educational experience for adults, for children, for everybody. Because when you put in that first trophy to read through, what it takes, what is fair chase hunting, to understand, and then to do a little bit more research and learn about the background. And, we have all this public ground because of conservation, because of the money set aside. And I think it's important because someone may grow up and maybe they have 80 acres behind their house that they hunt, but maybe they want to go elk hunting someday. And now all of a sudden they realize, how the wealth of land that's out there available to them. And then I would hope they start wondering, well, how did this come about, and learning more, and even the parents teaching those lessons. I think it's incredibly important.
Yeah. No, you were not here. Have you gone through the music, gotten to go through this display this time yet? Because you got in yesterday. Okay, so yeah, you'll have an opportunity soon, I hope. But last night, seeing those kids, and now you've got Jax and Bella. Jax is 6,
Yes,
and Bella's 2, right? I have seen a video of Jax with his mouth call for turkey hunting. Seems like they're pretty avid.
Yeah, and I'm a firm believer of just taking your kids along. Every kid's going to be ready to hunt at different ages. But I think it is so important to have that family time. So that way, when they see me getting ready, they just assume they're going to come along, And I think it's helpful for my husband, myself, our children, everyone to be involved in that. And, kids love it.
Yeah.
I love spending that time with mom and dad. And, things don't always go right. There's many things that can go wrong along the way. But I think it's important having them out there, having those challenges, because sometimes I think people also make it almost too easy, where, they get a great deer spotted, they bring their kid out, they shoot it, and there really wasn't the build up to it, And I know this year they're talking about peak of pursuit,
Yeah.
And to me, I think it's going after it. It's everything leading up to that moment. Those are the things you remember every time, because you're not going to get a record book animal every time you set out. but you're always going to have that process, and learning to love the process, I think, is important in passing that down.
Absolutely, yeah. So the theme is the peak of pursuit, and that is partly because of some of our world records that we have in this issue are the peak, because we have a mountain goat, we have a musk ox, and we have a Roosevelt. So there are some different unique animals that actually made world record status this time. But it is the theme, as you said, is so much more than that. Where so you've hunted the world. You're a big upper Midwest deer hunter. Tell a story of a interesting hunt that you've done in North America that you want people to hear about, or something that was memorable to you.
One of the things I'll be talking about in the keynote speaking event tonight is I brought my grandmother on a hunt. And, I think it's so important to remember that it's important to get people back into hunting that maybe were once involved and maybe just kind of fade away. My grandma was a hunter in her 30s, and she said my grandpa never brought her back because she shot the biggest buck of all. And I actually ran across a video of it. It's so cool, like on this old 8mm reel.
Oh my God.
And so I called her and I said, Grandma, I saw some video of you. Were you a hunter? And yes. And I said, how about you come hunting with me again? And she said, oh, I don't know about that. And I said, come with me. Took her to Colorado. We did a spot and stock mule deer hunt at 79 years old, and she shot a beautiful muley. And, it was just such an emotional, it gives me goosebumps even talking about it, because it reminds people, whether we're talking about kids or grandparents, it's never too late to become a hunter. The hunting community is so welcoming and everyone wants to help. And I think sometimes it can feel a little intimidating for people trying to get back into it or getting in to begin with. And I think that's a message I always want to send is, we're all here for you. I'm here to answer questions. It's an open arms community that wants more people involved.
Absolutely. So you mentioned peak of pursuit and your speech tonight also. I know fair chase is an important part in hunting ethics. How can we convey that hunting ethic out beyond the hunting community? What are opportunities we have to make our story renowned and make sure that hunters continue to carry that weight of being an ethical hunter?
And I think ethics can, it's important beyond the hunting community. And I believe the reason why is sometimes people will have preconceived notions of how hunting goes or what's happening out there, or even trophies, how that's even brought about. And they need to remember that there is so much honor in doing it correctly and in working at it and having a goal and making that come together. And in my opinion, that can be found in, fair chase hunting. And I think it's important to pass that down to children and to family members and to the entire community beyond hunting. So that way there aren't some of these misconceptions about it. And I think if we're all on that same page, you can just put that message out much better. And people understand, okay, you went after a really old, mature deer. You did your part. You got within range. It's pretty respectable, that's how you got your meat. You should be proud of that. So I think there's a variety of things, but I think it's very important beyond the scope of just our hunters teaching that as well.
We've covered a lot of ground. Are there things that you wanted? Is there a story that you're planning to tell us tonight that will, since this is coming out later, we're not giving any surprises with you giving a sneak peek of it, but is there any other stories or any other last minute lessons you want to share with people?
Well, I think, just for example, we have the Boone and Crockett record book sitting on our coffee table, and our kids go through it, and Jack's, before he could read, he's looking at the pictures and going through. And I sat him down for an interview before this, and I wanted to just get some ideas from him. And I said, Jax, would you like to get a trophy animal someday and enter it into the record books? And, oh, absolutely. I said, well, what are you going to get? I'm going to shoot a giant 22-point buck. I'm going to shoot a huge Boone and Crockett coyote and a Boone and Crockett jackrabbit. And I just laughed, and it'll be something that's played tonight. And I think that it's funny, but I think it also shows that even though some of those animals may not be in the record book, like, it's the mindset of children,
Right.
that he wants the best. He wants it to be fair chase. He wants to, go after it and put that time in. And, he even said, well, one thing I for sure need to get is a Boone and Crockett big pike. and he's 6, right?
Right.
He doesn't understand
Right.
all of it. But I guess it's the idea that he believes in his mind a Boone and Crockett quality animal is the
Is the
absolute
epitome.
peak. It's the epitome of what you could do. And in his mind, why wouldn't a jackrabbit be in that category, or a coyote, or whatever we do? But I think that's important for all of us to remember that for kids, they want to have goals and they want to reach them, just like we do as an adults. And so I think as parents, by teaching those things and giving them goals to go after, it's really, really important and can help shape their entire life.
Absolutely. You're the face and the voice as you walk through the Wonders of Wildlife Museum and you come into the National Collection of Heads and Horns. How does an exhibit like that and the Big Game Awards display of impact a public audience? And why was it important for you to, an opportunity for you to be part of that video?
It's one of the most honoring things I've ever been able to do. My mom and dad actually went through it on a whole pickleball tour. And my mom laughed because
Did she know?
no, she kind of knew, but she didn't know where it was. And she said, I could hear your voice before I even saw you. And their whole tour got to see it. And I think it's so important because you are getting such a large variety of people coming to see it. And then all of a sudden they can learn more about conservation. And to be able to be the person to kind of convey that message, to me, it's like the most honorable thing you could possibly do. And I'm just so happy to be able to be a part of it. And I get so many people who will send things on social media and they'll like take a picture and I'm like the size of the wall, and they get pictures, and it's just neat to be able to be part of that story. And to tell that message and to maybe be an influence to people who maybe didn't know much about hunting, and to train and educate them. And that way they can go home. And again, word of mouth is the best way to spread the word, in my opinion.
Absolutely. The club has, broad influence in a lot of ways, but increasing people who understand who we are from the conservation perspective beyond the getting a book animal. Helping us to build grassroots support, what would be the message we should be conveying back out? The Heritage of the Hunt podcast, the way we use our social media or our website. How can we help expand our audience to a broader area?
I think the most important thing is to bring more hunters in. As soon as you get more people involved, they want to learn more. So in my opinion, the number one thing is every one of us hunters take the initiative to get new people involved and keep them involved. That doesn't mean telling your children, you have to come with me. They might do it once or twice. They're not going to be interested. I'm talking really get people involved in part of the hunt and building that message of conservation, taking them to public land, showing them, what is out there and available, and then letting them help, do things to help build conservation, take them out and be a part of things so that they feel like they've got some skin in the game, I guess I would say. They're out there and they are making this really happen. And I think that's just so important. But in my opinion, the number one thing, we have to keep those new people coming in because, as the generations go, we need to have, it's just like a deer herd or anything else. We can't have all 5, 6-year-olds and no young bucks coming up. So.
Absolutely. And that's what's so inspirational about the Jack Steele Parker Generation Next event is the number of youth, the number of young girls. There was from very little to up to, well, like you said, it's supposed to be 16, and now some of them may be in their 17, 18, 19 because they had to shoot it within that awards period. But it is great to see that youth, and then to see tonight at the Buck Buckner 32nd Big Game Awards, we have the number of women that are people that are made the top 5 in their category. Melissa, is there any other closing comments or thoughts that you have, something we didn't cover that you would love for people to know?
The only other thing, I guess, would be to just take a moment to thank the parents that brought all those children there. They didn't go out and do that on their own. You see moms, dads, the whole family, brothers, sisters, everybody there. And I think that's one of the most telling parts is, they made it a family experience. They all came. They were all out in the field, numerous pictures. Yeah. There was a whole big group of them. And I think it's just it's so wonderful to see. And I think people, when they really sit down and think about how many times are they eating family meals together anymore, how many times are they truly doing events where everyone's enjoying them, I think hunting does that. It brings that together. And for us, we go out, we hunt, we cook, we clean, we process, we do all that together. And it just builds things that nothing else can. So I think that's something I try to remind people is just take the time and you will never, ever, ever regret those times together in the field.
Yeah, and that family time is in its own way the peak of pursuit, isn't it?
Right.
So, Melissa, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for being here in Springfield with us. We're excited to work with you and hear what you have to say tonight to our audience. Thank you so much for being on Boone and Crockett Club's Heritage of the Hunt.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.